Miniature Landscape Hobbies is proudly supported by these sponsors. The final faction for Armored Clash has finally arrived. The Sultanate has now re-emerged as a world power in the Dystopian Age, and as a force to be reckoned with the new faction battlegroup set, the Sabia Fighter, and its own set of command cards. War Cradle was good enough to send this over for a review, so let's dive in and take a look at the models, the rules, and the units that make this army unique. As always, the faction battlegroup starter set is very comprehensive and has enough to get a full-size army on the table. The Sultanate box is no exception to this. Like all faction battlegroups, it also includes the rules, templates, tokens, and dice to get you up and running with Armored Clash. The box also has command and conquest cards, which are a really engaging element of the system, although they also sent me the Sultanate specific cards. Just to be clear, other than the artwork matching the force, one deck of command and conquest cards is the same as the next, so these are a cool addition, but not mandatory. One of the things you notice right off the bat are these, the portal tokens. Clear, plastic tokens that are part of the truly unique element of how the Sultanate plays. The rules for these are in the Sultanate Orbat, but they basically give you the ability to move the unit of your choice in and out of portals that you place at the start of each turn, allowing your troops to show up where they're not expected. There are also some other special rule effects the Sultanate player can use these for, including bringing reserves onto the table and performing hit-and-run close combat charges. This effect is justifiably powerful as far as game mechanics go, but it is limited to outside of the opponent's deployment zone, and the number of portals in play is limited by the game size. This should ensure a strong flavor without unbalancing things too much. It could also result in the Sultanate's more elite units getting stranded far away from support. So, there is that. Okay, let's dive into the box and grab the plastics. First up are the bases, and there's not much to talk about here. There are a good number of them, and they're pretty much the same as the other bases in Armored Clash. There are also the obligatory industrial building sprues here, which provide terrain with the set. This is a nice touch for getting you up and gaming. Let's move on to the units. There are 4 armored sprues and 4 infantry sprues in the box, so let's start with the infantry. The first infantry unit you see on the sprues is actually one of the elites, the Spica Orions. These are flexible light infantry with vanguard deployment and ambushers. Combined with Pioneer, these guys will likely be sniping from woods and terrain. With a range of 32 inches, they should be able to keep light units pinned in place. Interestingly, you also see Portal Strike here. If I understand this rule correctly, these guys can come out of a portal from reserve, charge into hand-to-hand combat, and if they win, go back into the portal and back to reserve again. To support this, they have a pretty solid melee value. They also have a whopping discipline of 9. I imagine with that much flexibility and such solid stats, this unit probably comes with a hefty price tag. Moving along the sprue past the banner bearers, we get to the Janissaries. These are the economy troops and can be turned into a command squad. Slinging basic weapons and sporting a mediocre aerial attack, these look to be a moderately flexible choice. The veteran ability gives them a solid chance of getting 1 extra heroic strike per activation, which is cool, and they again have solid discipline, making them dependable under fire. The HQ option here has Portal Mastery, which lets you move any portals that are already in play, even your opponents, if they're also Sultanate players. This could be a fun option for surprising your opponent. Next up are the Persian Immortals. In game terms, these guys are for one thing, and one thing only: close combat. With corrosive fumes providing a 4-inch radius and stoic defense, they can fight both on the charge and on the defense. they also have devastating, so they should hit pretty hard. Using Portal Strike will make them particularly fearsome against light troops. A discipline of 8 and no break limit also means that once these guys start fighting, they're going to stay there. On the other hand, they only have a melee attack and standard infantry stats, so you'll want to stay aggressive with them as they'll be vulnerable to shooting, making them something of a close combat one-trick pony. Speaking of ponies, well, the robotic ones anyway, next to the Immortals are the Macedonian Companions. With a movement of 10 and an overrun move, these guys can really get around the field. With shock in their stat line, they're going to be the bane of infantry if they can get a charge off. Like the Immortals though, they're not set up for shooting. They do have durable and shrouded, so they can likely take a few shots as they close with the enemy, which is good, because they don't have Portal Strike to help them. Strategically, I think these guys want to seize objectives rather than duke it out. Over here on the sprue, we come to the vehicle-mounted cannon, and below that is the vehicle itself. Like most vehicles in Armored Clash, there are multiple variants here. In this case, the Ulgan mobile gun and the Mergen transport. The chassis is based on the Ironhide transport used by the Union, so it'll be familiar to most players. The Mergen is a solid transport with moderate speed, survivability, and stats. The bailout rule applies, which helps passengers survive if the vehicle is destroyed. And it has a light-range weapon to support infantry and defend itself. This is one of those units that's useful to have even if it's not the star of the show. The Ulgan trades transport capacity for a gun, and a good one. While it's not the most powerful weapon in the game, it's flexible, capable of targeting both light and heavy units. Being indirect, it can function as artillery or direct fire, and with Torrent and its weapon qualities, it's a solid option for clearing infantry out of cover. Like the Mergen, it's not a standout unit on its own, but a unit of these will be a handy addition that you won't regret. Let's move on to the heavy sprues. First up are the Corps Caroli Luminants. These are heavy infantry in every sense. They have poor range capabilities, but absolutely devastating close combat attacks. Combined with Portal Strike, Stoic Defense, and the terrifying trait, these otherworldly soldiers are shock troops ideal for seizing objectives from infantry and cavalry. Almost any opponent outside of a behemoth should have a healthy fear of these guys. They can also be upgraded to a command unit to lead a battle group. One thing worth noting is that they're slow, with a 3-inch movement, but with a defense of 3 and a damage limit of 2, and an astounding discipline of 11, they're going to be very hard to shut down without the use of the biggest guns. Beside them are the Corps Caroli Nyx. These are very similar to the Luminants, but with swapped weapon profiles. They're decent in close combat, but their shooting is where they really shine. At first glance, they don't throw a lot of dice, until you notice the penetrating quality. This might be the scariest rule in the game, as it allows them to destroy multi-wound models despite only inflicting a single point of damage. Their ranges are short, so these units want to leverage Portal Strike, appearing on a flank, blasting tough targets, and then retreating back through the same portal. I think these will be a favorite for Sultanate generals, while opponents will be less than thrilled to see them on the table. Next up is an odd one, the Monowheel. These guys are fast, with a 12-inch move, meaning that they can travel over 2 feet in a single activation when going on the double. With Pioneer, they can go almost anywhere without penalty. They're surprisingly resilient too, with Shrouded and a defense of 3. The strangest part is their armament. With all-out attack, they can use both weapons in a single round. Hurtling, combined with the trail quality, means they damage enemy units they pass through during movement. After that, they can still shoot either the same or a different unit with a modest number of dice. But again, that intimidating, penetrating quality is here. Tactically, I think Sultanate generals will mainly use these to grab objectives. Just remember, mono wheels have no melee or impact value, so they're vulnerable to being charged and can't charge opponents themselves. Next are the tank hulls, which come in two variants. The first is the Hyalit. With defense 3 and damage 2, it's not the heaviest tank around, but it's solid. As a hover vehicle, it ignores most terrain effects. Its weapons are designed more for suppression than raw damage, making it a flexible and dependable choice for the table. The second is the Pillar of Light, and this really is one of my favorite models in the range. Where the Hyalit is flexible, this one is not. It's an artillery piece with indirect, siegebreaker, and torrent. Units in cover will fear this, and with a 30-inch range, it can safely sit back and provide support. Moving down the sprue, we come to the rotorcraft, of which there are 3 types. These are fast, with a move of 9 and vanguard, but they're also as tough as the tanks. The first variant is the Khepri, an all-rounder. Like many Sultanate vehicles, it doesn't throw a huge number of dice, but compensates with the deadly penetrating quality. Next is the Senahem, which appears to be the Sultanate's primary anti-aircraft option, though like many armored class AA units, it can double down as a light artillery piece too. Then there's this, the Apophis, and this one is just strange, but strange in a good way. Its ranged weapon has Portal Blast, meaning it attacks through portals you place, rolling a respectable number of dice. I'm honestly a bit stumped trying to describe how this will play, but I imagine sniping enemies from across the board while relying on portal placement to control line of sight will be the order of the day. There's nothing else in Armored Clash quite like this, and it's incredibly cool. When I get my Sultanate force up and running, I'm including these purely for the fun factor. Next up are the ATVs, which I forgot to look at because they're on the infantry sprue. With speed 7, defense 3, and a single wound, these have Shrouded and Pioneer, continuing the Sultanate's mobility theme, though they are fairly fragile. There are 2 variants here as well. The Parlama is an all-rounder armed similarly to the Hyalit, and is a good choice if you want a flexible vehicle without the full durability of a tank. The Kavgaci is a more maneuverable equivalent of the Senahem, armed the same way and fulfilling dual roles as light artillery and anti-air. That wraps up the sprues. Now let's get to the resin behemoth in the kit, the real star of the show. This is a hovering ponderous vehicle with a 12-inch move, defense of 4, and a massive damage limit of 12. There are 2 variants here that you can build. First is the Ferric Command Skiff, which can serve as your HQ. It has a ton of special rules, can control 2 portals, has all-out attack 3, sponsons, and hurtling. This is not a typical command vehicle. With its speed, durability, and variety of medium-range weapons, I think Sultanate generals will want to drive this straight into the enemy lines, using portal mastery and its many guns to establish dominance. It can bring supporting infantry through portals around it, or direct portals to enable Apophis rotorcraft to attack remotely. I see a huge amount of potential here for clever and disruptive gameplay. The other option is the Mushir Escort Skiff. Where most Sultanate vehicles don't throw many dice, this one absolutely does. With an all-out attack of 4, it's a pure fire support platform. Long range, indirect, medium range, short range, it does it all. It can even function like a monowheel, driving through enemy units and hitting them with trailing attacks. Strategically, the Mushir is straightforward. Place it where it has a good line of sight, and let it rip. It can advance with your troops, or sit back and pound its targets depending on your plan. Finally, we come to the last unit, and the only aircraft, the Sabia Fighter. This isn't included in the battlegroup box, but I have one of these excellent resin flyers, so it's worth covering. Its stats follow the Sultanate theme. It's not the most heavily armored or armed aircraft, but it can fulfill almost any role except interceptor. It has weapons for all 3 types of targets, heavy, light, and aerial. As usual, it doesn't roll huge dice pools, but once again, that penetrating quality on the heavy weapon makes it a legitimate one-shot vehicle killer. That wraps up our tour of the new Sultanate Armored battlegroup for Armored Clash. This is a highly colorful faction that clearly rewards finesse. It's not a brute force army list like the Crown, nor is it an all-elite force like the Imperium, but it sits somewhere in between, relying heavily on clever portal use. Mastering portal placement and timing will be the key skill for any Sultanate general, but once that's in hand, watch out. I think this army is going to turn heads and seriously challenge the other factions. Now I just need more hours in the day to get mine painted and on the table. I'll be back soon with more miniature painting tutorials, product reviews, and terrain tips. In the meantime, I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider joining my Patreon. Right now, there's also an extra benefit for members at all tiers, even free members, and that's an exclusive guide to mastering miniature painting theory. This handcrafted PDF will enhance your painting skills. I pretty much guarantee it. And best of all, you can get it completely free as a thank you for taking interest in miniature landscape hobbies. Just sign up for the free Patreon membership tier. No credit card required, no strings attached. Lastly, if you'd like to purchase this set or any miniatures or hobby supplies for yourself, you'll see links to Wayland Games and Miniature Market in the video description. Any purchase you make will contribute a small commission to the channel, which I would really appreciate. See you next time for more miniature gaming, painting, and diorama videos. But most importantly, until then, remember to keep building life in miniature.